All right, let's talk about something that's on a lot of researchers' minds right now: AI in qualitative research. Yeah, I know. It feels like a weird fit, right? If you're someone who's kind of intrigued by what these new tools could do, but also a little skeptical, then you are absolutely in the right place. We're going to get into it. You know, it all really boils down to this one single question. Can an algorithm, can a piece of code truly get human experience? I mean, really understand the nuance, the inside jokes, the cultural context, all that messy, complicated stuff that makes us human. That's the big tension, and that's exactly what we're going to dig into. So, here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll look at the big promises of AI and, of course, the fears that come with them. Then, we'll talk about what the human-AI partnership actually looks like. After that, we'll get into how to keep your analysis deep and not shallow, figure out a responsible way to actually do this stuff, and then wrap up with a cool idea: the augmented researcher. Okay, so let's jump into our first big topic: the irreplaceable human interpreter. To really get past all the fear and hype, we've got to figure out what this relationship should even be. What's the AI's job? And way more importantly, what's our job? The part that a machine just can't do. All right, let's just say it out loud. This is the big fear, right? The elephant in the room. AI is going to replace me. The idea that some tool could take over the deep thinking, the interpretation, the human part of the work. And look, that is a totally valid concern, so let's face it head on. I love this metaphor because it just nails it. Think of it like this. AI is your sous-chef. It's not the head chef. The sous-chef does all the prep work, right? The chopping, the dicing, the organizing, all the tedious but necessary stuff. And what does that do? It frees up the chef, that's you, to focus on the real art, the flavor combinations, the plating, the creative vision, the stuff that makes the dish special. And this table here, it really breaks down that kitchen dynamic. Look at what AI can do. It can speed things up, like a first pass at coding. It can spot patterns and help you get organized. Basically, it cuts down on the manual grunt work. But now look at what it can't do. It can't give you interpretive depth. It might see a word repeated 100 times, but it has zero clue what the intent behind that word is. It can't decide what's significant or make a judgment call. It handles the what, but the why, that's all you. And this, right here, this is the absolute core of it. An AI sees patterns and data. It knows what's statistically common or rare, but it has no idea what's culturally meaningful. It might flag a phrase because it's an outlier, but it doesn't know if that's sarcasm or a piece of local slang or a reference that completely changes the meaning of everything. You need a human for that, someone with actual lived experience who gets the context. All right, so if we accept that AI isn't going to replace us, that brings up the next big worry. Could it accidentally make our work, shallow? Could it just point us to the most obvious patterns and keep us from finding those really rich, deep insights? Let's talk about how to make sure that doesn't happen. And yeah, that is a real risk. You have to remember how these things work. Large language models are built to find the most probable, the most common patterns in text. So if you're not careful, they can just end up telling you what you already know, proving the obvious. And in doing that, they might completely miss the weird outlier comment, the one that doesn't fit the pattern, which is often where the most interesting stuff is hiding. So the key thing to see here is that the risk isn't the tool itself. It's all about how you use it. On the one hand, you have the passive approach. That's where you just dump in your data and say, hey, AI, summarize this. What you'll get back is probably pretty predictable, pretty generic. But on the other hand, you have active guidance. This is where you are in the driver's seat. You're using prompts based on your theoretical framework. You're using your own notes and thoughts to push and guide the AI. You're not just accepting its first answer, you're having a conversation with it. And that's what turns it from a boring summarizer into a real partner in discovery. Okay, we absolutely have to talk about bias. This is huge. You can't think of AI as some kind of neutral, objective machine. It's not. These systems are trained on, the internet, on huge amounts of text written by humans. So guess what? They soak up all the biases that are out there in society. The cultural assumptions, the stereotypes, all of it. So if you treat what an AI tells you as some kind of pure, unfiltered truth, you're making a really big mistake. So how do we protect our research from that? Well, here are 4 really practical safeguards. Number 1, keep a record. In your notes, your memos, write down why you decided to go with an AI suggestion or why you rejected it. Justify your choices. 2, do a spot check. Take a chunk of the data and code it yourself, the old-fashioned way. Then compare it to what the AI did. See where they line up and where they don't. 3. Phone a friend. Bring in another human researcher to look at the codes and see if they agree. That's just good old triangulation. And finally, number 4, just be honest. Be totally transparent in your methods section about exactly how you used AI. No black boxes. And thinking about these safeguards for quality, it leads us right into the next big piece of this puzzle, the practical and maybe more importantly, the ethical side of things. Because this isn't just about getting the analysis right. It's about our fundamental responsibilities to the people we do research with. Yeah, and let's be real. For a lot of us, this is the deal breaker. Confidentiality, privacy. Our data is often so personal, so sensitive. The thought of just uploading transcripts to some random company's cloud server, it feels wrong, and frankly, it should make us nervous. So the question is, can you even do this safely? Before we talk about solutions, let's be super clear on the risks. When you use one of these online AI tools, you could be opening the door to people who shouldn't see your data. Even worse, the company providing the tool might be using your participants' words, their private stories, to train their next AI model. And let's be honest, did your participants agree to that? Almost certainly not. These aren't minor details, they're huge ethical red flags. Okay, so it sounds scary, but you can manage this risk with a really clear step-by-step workflow. Here's how you do it safely. First, get explicit consent. Tell your participants upfront that you might use AI tools and get their permission. Step 2, and this is non-negotiable, de-identify everything. I mean, strip out every name, every place, every detail that could possibly trace back to a person before that data goes anywhere. 3, you got to do your homework. Actually read the data policies of whatever tool you're thinking of using. And 4, the safest bet is always to use tools that run locally on your own computer or ones that have been officially approved by your university or institution. You know, there's this worry that if you even mention you used AI, people will think your research isn't credible. But I think it's actually the opposite. True research rigor isn't about pretending you don't use tools. It's about being transparent. If you keep a detailed log, an audit trail of your whole process, the prompts you used, what the AI gave you, and the decisions you made, that can actually make your work more rigorous, more trustworthy, not less. So we've walked through the fears, we've talked about the workflows, the safeguards. Where does that leave us? Well, I think it leads us to something pretty exciting, a totally new way of thinking about what it means to be a qualitative researcher. And here it is. If you remember just one thing from our whole conversation today, make it this. AI replaces tasks, not roles. Let me say that again. It replaces tasks, not roles. It automates the boring, mechanical stuff so that you, the researcher, can spend your brainpower on the deep thinking that only a human can do. It's about automating the labor, not the insight. And this is what that new focus looks like. As an augmented researcher, your job shifts away from the grunt work and toward this high-level strategic thinking. You become a curator, sorting through what the AI gives you and deciding what's actually important. You're the fact-checker, the context verifier, making sure it all makes sense. You're the ethical backstop. And all that time you save, you can now pour it into what really matters, diving deeper into the nuances, and maybe even developing brand new theory. You stop being just a data manager and you become a true sense maker. So in the end, maybe we're asking the wrong question. Maybe it's not about if we should use AI. The more interesting question is how. Can we use it to free up our time and our minds to ask bigger, bolder, more creative questions than ever before? What if this isn't about making our old work faster, but about enabling entirely new kinds of discovery? Now that's an exciting thought. Thanks for diving into this with me.